Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast. This is a podcast where we talk to entrepreneurs, business owners and professionals about some of the tough times they've had to push through in their careers. Today's guest is Philip Sheen from Sheen Media. Now, Phil and I talk about a range of different topics as usual. Interesting, on this episode we talked a lot about mental health, and probably it is something that is under-discussed in the business community and the entrepreneurial community. So before we get into the start of the discussion, I just want to give you a sneak peek of what Phil had to say on mental health.
I didn't know what was going on. I was starting to have some really kind of low, anxious moments. And I had one day where it just hit me out of the blue. I had this massive, heat pain in my chest. It was I found it hard to breathe.
Wow. And
I realized I was starting to have a little panic attack, and I had never thought that would ever happen to me. It's amazing. I thought I was invincible from that point of view. I was the kind of person that didn't even believe mental health existed to that level. I always thought you could just smile and be happy and harden up and
tough it out.
Yep. Exactly. And then all of a sudden I had this moment when I felt very vulnerable in my business. I didn't think things were going well and I didn't know why. And that really threw me for a six. Hit me for a six. And I spoke to another friend of mine who I felt was similar to me. And he said, yeah, I had the same thing in his industry. And it felt really good to kind of know that I wasn't just going crazy. But that set me off on a search for self-discovery in many ways. I had to understand why was this happening, and if it can happen to me, who else is going through this?
Hello and welcome to the Be The Push podcast. My name is Jack Ferguson, and I'm going to be sharing with you stories of how business owners and entrepreneurs had to push through the hard times in their careers. We're going to be discussing the lessons learned from these experiences while arming you with actionable advice so you can be the push when you need it most. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. Let's get started. All right, so today we're here with Philip Sheen from Sheen Media. Phil, how are you going today?
I'm good, Jack. It's good to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. So Sheen Media, you guys are a marketing agency?
We're a marketing agency. We connect hearts and minds to brands through storytelling.
Cool. So, all right, so how long ago did you start?
So we've been going for about 8 years now, and I've been in the game for about 10 to 15 years all up, but we've been going for a little while now. We've got a presence in Brisbane and in Melbourne, and things are going well.
So, all right, so you started 8 odd years ago. Why marketing?
Look, I think I got into marketing because I got into film and TV and photography early, and it was just kind of like a natural progression.
Yeah, right.
It was easy for me. I enjoyed doing it. I didn't study at university.
Neither did I.
I actually went to uni. I went to uni for all of 5 minutes.
Right.
I applied for multiple TAFE courses in film and TV. I didn't get in. So out of desperation, I applied for university just because I thought that's what you had to do. And it was in Toowoomba. And they accepted, and I went to enrollment day and all those kinds of things. I was sitting up in the auditorium, and it was at the same university my father was a lecturer at. And I remember seeing him come into the auditorium just as we'd all sat down, and he came across and spoke to the person at the podium, and he said, just need to speak to Philip Sheen. And I went down and he said, actually, you've been accepted into TAFE in Brisbane in film and TV. I walked out. I never went back to uni. So I'd moved to Brisbane from Toowoomba from there.
Right, good choice, I'd say. So the listeners probably think that I actually talked to you guys about before we start the podcast about university, because about every 3 podcasts I start ragging on it and tell everyone how rubbish it is. But I actually don't. I don't check with make sure the guests hate uni when they come along. They just all seem to have to. But I was in the same boat as you. I think that I did uni because I thought I should. not because of any other reason. And yeah, I did a pharmacy degree actually, which was absolutely useless to most things that I do these days. But why do you think we feel that pressure to go there?
I think just because school tells us we need to, and I think it's just been ingrained in the system.
Yeah.
The whole system is built on this graduation from school, go to university. It's wonderful for certain professions, but for me personally, I'm such a practical person. If I find myself in a schoolroom or a lecture hall, I just lose interest in it, and I just can't focus, the same way I can when I've just got my hands on. And I think that's why I liked photography and film so early on, because I could just get out there and take photos and get on the street and record people playing music, busking, things like that. It was just great.
Yeah, because with a lot of this stuff, you can just do it, right? You can just, you can just start a podcast, or you can just start taking photos, and you don't necessarily need a degree or a piece of paper to give you permission.
It's a lot easier now, but back when I was doing it, you did need to even just go to university to do film and TV. I think that's why it was so hard for me to even just get into TAFE, because I was so fixated on getting my show reel together and getting accepted. And
but why did you need to go? Did you need to go because you needed the equipment, or are you talking about you had mental barriers that didn't allow you to just go out there and do it?
So I just sorry, the question.
So when you're saying that you can't just go out, like when you started, you can't just go out and start. You felt like you had to go to uni. Why did you feel like you had to go to uni?
Oh, okay. Well, because at the time, even if you wanted to be in film and TV, which is what I wanted to be in at the time, everyone said you had to go to university to get a job in the industry, and it was just what we were told at school. And I always questioned it. And my father was a lecturer, and to his credit, he always said you don't have to go to university. So it didn't come from my family, and he knows the system. So I think that I look back on that now, and I think that was great advice, which I listened to at the time, and I didn't put so much pressure on myself. I think I just wanted to get out of Toowoomba,
right?
Because the big smoke was calling.
Yeah, no, I get that feeling. I'm from a country town too. So
where are you from?
Yarrawonga, in Victoria.
Yeah, right.
Right on the border, yeah.
That sounds like a long way away.
It is. About 5,000 people. Yeah, so quite a small place. But yeah, I knew I had to go to the city to make things happen from there. But so let's talk about marketing. So you got into marketing. What was the first thing you did?
So I actually started in street press. I started taking photos for Sheen magazine at the time, and I'd go out clubbing and take all the social photos. And then I started working for other street press magazines, and I got into design and advertising and learning how publications came together. And it was a step-by-step process. It happened over, maybe 5 years, but I started to get introduced through necessity to different areas of the industry, like graphic design and how to sell an ad, and all those kinds of things. How to even walk the streets and hand out the magazine and talk to people on the street and find out what they might be reading. And I was really I had a baptism of fire, because street press don't have a lot of staff, and pretty much everyone has to do all the jobs.
Right. So did that come naturally to you, to be able to just talk to people you don't know on the street? Because I think on a scale of 1 to 10, from something difficult or fearful, that's up there. That sounds really, really tough to for me, someone like me who's quite introverted. I think I'd have a really tough time talking to people I didn't know all day long on the street.
It's okay when you've got something in your hand.
Okay.
Back then it was different, because we didn't have people on every corner trying to sell something to you. We weren't oversaturated in that way. We weren't sick of talking to people who came up to us on the street. So back then it was a lot easier, but when you got something in your hand, it's a lot easier to just go over to someone and say, hey.
All right. So how long do you think that worked for before we did see that influx of people on the corner, as you say? Because I walk through the CBD in Brisbane, and you're basically going to get harassed by a couple of people, I'd say, most times.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because from a marketing point of view, I believe that all good marketing is human to human, heart to heart, that kind of approach. And it's interesting though, but we cold shoulder anyone that approaches us on the street. And do you know what I think it is? It's that we just don't trust them. And that's, in my industry, what we try to do is, connect people to brands. You have to build trust. And for us personally, what we do is we use storytelling to do that. And I think that's what the missing ingredient is there on the street. You just don't trust people.
And they're wearing the shirt, though. You can see that they're representing a certain brand, and you just know they have an agenda.
But you've been burnt once, and so you don't really want to get burnt again. You've stopped and talked to them once, maybe, and you know what they're after. And they've got the same approach every single time. So they don't really care about connecting with you. They just want to get a statistic.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I've watched the way it goes and the way it's kind of evolved. And one thing I noticed is they get more and more sophisticated, it seems, at what they do. Because one thing I find really interesting is they'll start talking to you from about 5 meters away. So they get that 5 meters in as you're walking towards them. They don't wait until you're a meter away because they don't get enough, content in, I feel. But when you're quite a way away, they're waving and they're trying to get your attention early, just so they have more time to get their point across, I suppose.
Yeah. Do you ever just pretend to be talking on your phone as you walk up to them? I do that all the time.
I will cross the street to avoid it. I find it so awkward. I find it so. I just.
Yeah.
I can't deal with it.
It's the worst. I often feel so bad just holding the phone to my ear and walking straight past them going, this is just dodgy. Just walk past and say no. But after the 10th time in the day, it gets a bit annoying. Yeah,
and I reckon I'd struggle to do something that's so low percentage. I mean, their percentages must be low, like 2%. I don't know what their conversions would be, but it'd have to be low.
Aren't they all backpackers?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, next topic.
Next topic.
All right. So you worked in marketing for a while, and then what was it that made you want to start your own business?
So I've always really, in my working life, the majority of it I've worked for myself. And when I started working for myself, it was once again out of necessity. I was working for a company. I met a fellow creative, and we started a little business together, a little creative agency together, and we because the company was changing, the organization was changing, we thought, why don't we put our minds together and service clients in the same way we've been doing here, and it worked. It worked well, and it really kind of taught me how to move on and do what I'm doing now. It was a real baptism of fire in many ways. I learned a lot of hard lessons and early on, which have helped me now.
Mm-hmm. And looking back, would you say it was good to learn those hard lessons early on? Because I kind of look back on a few of my lessons and I think I am glad that I learned the really hard ones early. I think the earlier you learn them, the better.
Yeah, we had some really insane situations where people would try to get out of paying, and they'd try to sue us just to do it, and those kind of situations really mess with you. And getting through those and working amicably to try and resolve the situation without it going too far, situations like that just help you further on. I think every little situation you go through builds you up for the next one, and it just makes it a lot more easier.
It's interesting you say that. Hard lesson number one: not everyone pays. And you do not think about that before you get into business.
You don't. Everything's rosy. It's a real honeymoon period, and I don't know what kind of breakdown that is. It's not necessarily communication. Some people just go through really hard times and they freak out and business goes south, and it's weird. But thankfully that doesn't happen to me now, because I've learnt those lessons in the past.
Mm-hmm.
So
have you got some ways to avoid that now?
Ways to avoid that. Look, back then, I think we were just too trustworthy. I think if you give people enough rope to hang themselves with, they will. And I still struggle with getting people to pay on time and things, and I'm sure every business owner does now. But back then, I was probably just too trusting. And you've just got to put systems in place to make sure things are a little bit more streamlined, and there's a bit more communication going, and people understand what the terms are beforehand. But they feel like rookie mistakes at the time, but everybody goes through them, and I'm thankful I did. And that wasn't the only things we went through. There's also teething processes with having a business partner and understanding each other, and we've since gone our separate ways, but he was an amazing creative person I learned a lot from, and I'm glad we can still call each other friends. We could have gone the other way, but things change, and we went out and did our own things.
There's nothing like starting a business with someone to really test out a relationship, right?
It is, yeah. It's you're practically married to them, and we used to joke about that. And he was really into star signs, and I wasn't so much. But he was a Scorpio, and I'm an Aquarian, and he did some research on it. And apparently, we're very hypersensitive people with each other, but we get along great. And I was speaking to him recently, and his fiance is an Aquarian too. So I laughed and I laughed.
Yeah, well, that explains it all.
That's good training for him then.
Yeah. All right, so I'd be interested in. So you've started Sheen Media about 8 years ago. Can you talk us through, on this podcast, we typically talk about the tough times people had to go through their business career, and you've touched on a couple there, but is there any in particular that come to mind that was, a time that was really hard to get through?
It's funny, when things just all happen all at once, and a lot of different influences and different energies come in from around you, and they all kind of mean something together. Well, in this business, I'm also starting to explore how to help startups with their marketing, and I'm also looking to do my own startups and starting side projects, and that has also sorry, I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
I was looking out at your beautiful view.
Tough times,
yeah. So all of those things happening at once around me, and while I'm trying to run a business, I started to forget what my passion and my purpose was. I started to get sidetracked easily, and I think that happens to a lot of people, and I had to kind of retrain myself, get myself back in line, with the help of good friends and family, just to work out what it is I actually love doing. I found that when I focused on my other side projects, my business was suffering. I wasn't putting the same energy into it, and I had to address why was that happening, and it was my passion. I'd just forgotten what my passion was, which was storytelling. But leading up to that, I didn't know what was going on. I was starting to have some really kind of low, anxious moments. And I had one day where it just hit me out of the blue. I had this massive, heat pain in my chest. It was,
right.
I found it hard to breathe.
Wow. And
I realized I was starting to have a little panic attack. And I had never thought that would ever happen to me. It's amazing. I thought I was invincible from that point of view. I was the kind of person that didn't even believe mental health existed to that level. I always thought you could just smile and be happy and harden up and
tough it out.
Yep. Exactly. And then all of a sudden I had this moment when I felt very vulnerable in my business. I didn't think things were going well, and I didn't know why. And that really threw me for a six. Hit me for a six. And I spoke to another friend of mine who I felt was similar to me. And he said, yeah, I had the same thing in his industry. And it felt really good to kind of know that I wasn't just going crazy. But that set me off on on a search for self-discovery in many ways. I had to understand why was this happening, and if it can happen to me, who else is going through this? And
how long into your business did this start happening?
Oh, look, I think this happened probably 2 years ago, at a time when I was starting to explore other side projects. You know, when there's so much pressure on you, you've got you've got your day job, you've got your family, and then you've got these other things that are kind of sucking all your energy. It really makes you quite weak if you're not careful. You can get into a pretty steep situation without even knowing. All your energy's drained. You start to feel weak and bored with the day-to-day that you've got to do, and everything else looks more exciting. And then it just hits you all of a sudden. You might be having problems with your business that you don't really know how to solve.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And so for me it was discovering that I was quite open to having anxious moments, and that really affected me.
It's not something we talk about a lot in this space. I know I've heard of someone like a Gary Vaynerchuk. He says that we've got to talk about this way more. There's a lot of depression, a lot of anxiety in the startup space, in that small business space. I wonder, do you sometimes wonder how many people this really does affect?
I guarantee it affects a lot more people than we expect. That's what made me realize, if this can happen to me, it can happen to anyone. And I started talking to other people, especially in the startup scene, who I know this really affects. You know, in the startup world, we've got a lot of people that you have to put on a brave face. There's so much pressure on them to look like the next big thing. And we're constantly bombarded in the media with all these success stories. And we're told that success is by how much your business is valued at. And, everyone's striving to be the next Zuck. You know? And it really does affect you. When you're starting out, you're putting a project out there. It's your little baby. You want it to succeed. You want it to grow. You start getting staff. You start looking for funding. You have to then feel like you've got to be on top of the world. You've got to be in control. You've got to have that big brave face on. You've got to be that leader that everyone follows. And you're reading all these articles, what Mark Zuckerberg eats before breakfast. And it just piles up and up and up and up and up. And it compounds. And before long, you've got all this pressure based on you. You don't know where to kind of offload it. And I think this is where we're running into a real problem, because everybody starts to want to become an entrepreneur. Everyone wants to have their own little startup. Everyone wants to work for themselves and grow a small business because they're sick of working for the man. And they very quickly realize it's not all it's cracked up to be sometimes.
Not all rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah,
is that what you're telling me?
That's right.
All right.
That's what I discovered.
Yeah. I think a few other people discovered that too.
Well, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more of it too. And that's why it's important for me. I think I wanted to share that today, because when I was going through that, I didn't know anyone. Before I spoke to my friend, I didn't know anyone else who'd kind of had that moment. And whilst it didn't lead into a seriously depressive state, I didn't suffer depression further than that. I could see how quickly that could escalate.
Could spiral, yeah.
And the more you focus on that energy, the more it becomes you. And I think for a lot of people, that will quickly happen.
All right, I want to come back to that and talk a bit more about that, but I do want to bring up, just you've talked about how we get bombarded by the media about become an entrepreneur, blah blah blah. It's so good, you work for yourself and stuff the man, and it's make billions. Don't make millions, make billions. But I've talked to people recently, and I find a lot of people come, not necessarily to me, but maybe to me and to some people I know about. For example, I've got this great idea for an app, and I can't bring myself to bullshit. I can't bring myself to tell them that their idea really means that much, and no disrespect to them, but it doesn't. At that stage, it's very, very worthless. But they're not at the stage where they know they understand that, an idea is just an idea. It's not going to, without it being implemented, and that's very tough to do. It's not anything. So I've been having this. I give people very blunt. I've made a few apps and they haven't done that well, and I give them my honest assessment of what they have to do. They never like it. It's not what they want to hear. They want to hear, oh yeah, great idea. Just go to Upwork, put it up for $1,000. You'll get an app. Boom, you'll make millions. But then again, I have turned off everyone who I've told the honest, brutal truth to. I've turned every one of them off starting a business. And then I've started questioning whether that's the right thing to do. And for me, I got into this game by being sold it was easier than what it is. And I don't regret that. I'm really happy that happened, because I don't think I would have started. If I had been, what I'm saying to these people, if I had been told that, if that was my first touch point, I don't think I would have started. And that would be a massive shame for me. So I'm trying to work out how you balance that message of giving people reality about what business is like, but not putting them off it, because, I'm one of those people who thinks it'd be great if everyone had a go at starting a business. I think that if it doesn't work out for them, they'll be better employees. They'll understand money doesn't fall from the sky, and they'll just, it's an experience. I think everyone would be great for everyone. So how do we balance reality with, I suppose, optimism and getting people to start? Because I believe that starting the business, that's the variable that really matters.
Yeah, it's a tough question, especially in this day and age, because everything, the startup world, the small business world, it's so shiny and new. Really, it is, because we've got all these accelerators and incubators opening up, and we've got all these co-working spaces, and they're all, hey, you've got an idea, we can help you make it happen. And I start to get a little bit sick by that, because after a while it sounds like everybody's just trying to take a piece of everyone's pie, and nobody really wants to help anyone. That's what it feels like sometimes. And it's not just enough to have an idea. You actually have to have a bit of grit, and you have to work hard at it. And I think a bit of reality has always helped me. When people have come and asked me a tough question, or they've maybe shone a light on something I hadn't considered. And once you can weigh up those options, for sure you want to go ahead with it. You're prepared to risk what's on the table. So yeah, I say tell people the cold hard truth. I say that can still be a positive experience, because of the outcome, because it can lead into, well, it's tough, yes, but this is great. Right,
but do we need a dose of optimism in there as well? Because I find some people, probably me included, I'm a very sort of logical, like straight down the line type person. I'll tell you, I won't mess, I won't mince my words. Do you think that messaging, like we're talking about marketing as well, how that's storytelling? Like, I mean, I'm just interested in what you think that story should look like, and what the optimism within that story should look like.
Yeah. I think if somebody is struggling with the idea, if they're questioning the idea, they'll find their own optimism. I don't think you need to put that in there. I think they'll see that as a great opportunity. They'll go, yep, that sounds tough, but I'm still really keen to do it. I don't know how much optimism you have to put into it. I think just sharing the facts and sharing your story is enough. I really do.
Okay. Yeah. Very interesting. And okay, so I want to go back to just the challenges, the mental challenges this game can have at times. And I've sort of had my own troubles with those anxious moments and whatnot over time, which I didn't have before starting a business. And it is kind of like you, I think, something that just came out of the blue. And I'm a very controlling person, and I found that if I tried to control those feelings too much, that it got worse. So I had to become someone that was, allow it to happen and allow those anxious moments to happen was almost the way that I deal with it. And I still continue to do it from time to time. Was that your approach?
Yeah, well, that led to, a pathway of trying to understand myself more. I realized that, well, if I'm going to get on top of this or keep on top of this. I need to be aware of what's triggering that, what's making it happen, what when I'm getting sucked into that energy. And I'm actually reading a good book at the moment by Michael Singer called The Untethered Soul, and it talks a lot in that about how we try to control the world around us. We try to control everything we do just to keep ourselves safe. You know, he talks about we have a primal instinct to defend ourselves, and since the caveman days, all that's kind of disappeared, and now we tend to protect our own psyche, our own ideas, our personal stuff. And when somebody tries to attack that, that's where we defend ourselves. And so similarly, we do that with the world. You often hear people, ask them how their day's going, and they say, "Oh, surviving." It says a lot. We're trying to control everything around us, and what he has kind of said in this book is, you've got to surrender. You've got to let go. You've got to let it pass through you. And I think once you start to understand that, and how that really does affect your life, because you start getting drawn into that energy, you start thinking about the worst possible thing. If you're presented with a negative thought, you start going further into that, and it compounds and gets worse and worse and worse, and that will recycle. Maybe in another month it might come up again and force you into that pattern. And by letting go, by stopping that control, it seems to be what can help you move on and overcome that. So anyway, that's what I'm reading at the moment. It's been quite helpful, but I think the key is to just start trying to understand yourself more. We're complex. We are complex beings, and we're in a world where we're being bombarded by so many different influences. It's easy to forget. It's easy to get sidetracked. It's easy to think you've got to be something else. So for me, it was just a self-discovery moment and a journey, and it won't stop. I'll keep doing that, but it's definitely helping.
Do you find yourself comparing yourself to other entrepreneurs and the people we hear about in the media, like the Zuckerbergs and whatnot? Is that something you get sucked into? Because I think we forget how good those people really are at what they do. I mean, we're talking seriously talented entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
that isn't, that I'm never going to reach those heights, and that's okay.
Well, I think for me it was, getting sidetracked, thinking that you should be like those people, when in fact you've got all these amazing gifts and talent yourself, and, you're going to kick ass because you are who you are. And if you show the world that, if you just do what you love doing, you show people that purpose and passion for what you're doing, you'll be fine. But we get so sidetracked thinking that we've got to be like that, following the top 5 things they do when they get out of bed, all that kind of stuff. It's so easy to get sucked into that.
Yeah.
And I haven't made it by any means. I'm still in the process of making things happen. And so for me, it's easy to get sucked into that. You've probably had a lot of people at this desk who've, achieved many great things in their time, and they're probably at a reflective state, or they're at a giving back stage of their career. I'm only just getting started, I think. So yeah, it's I've got to stop getting sidetracked with who I think I should be, and stay true to.
A big one of those for me was thinking you had to have a tech company too. So I worked with a tech startup for a while, and it just wasn't my thing. But I told myself that narrative that, oh no, this is the future, this is the way to go. And yeah, I think if you're not careful, you can get sucked into it. And I mean, I wasted about a year, probably, honestly, where in a position where I couldn't add a lot of value, to be honest, and it just wasn't really me. So I completely understand that point.
Understanding yourself and trying to get to the core of that, and trying to let go of everything else, it really does help. And you do find yourself on the wrong path so many times. You get all the way down, you go, oh man, I got a long way to go back. This is going to suck. And you start again and you keep going. But, bit by bit we improve, and we start to understand ourselves better and where we're going. But we need a helping hand along the way as well. Getting a mentor is good, and, talking to people, friends about different ideas, just being open. And
And what have you learned about that along the way, like communication that I find in this game, I wasn't a particularly gifted communicator when I started. I'm still not, but you have to learn it pretty quick. Otherwise, there's some stats floating around I see that, they say 85% of what you're going to achieve is going to be down to your communication and your relationships that you can build with clients and co-workers and blah, blah, blah. And only a small percentage is really your technical skill. I find that to be quite true. In my experience, that's the game. The game is in the relationships and that communication, as opposed to necessarily your tangible offering at times.
Yeah, totally. And so I've always been good with people, I felt. The thing I learned early on was that you've got to stop being precious. And as a creative person, I'm into the arts, I design, I take photos. It's very easy to attach all your emotion to what you produce. And even so in the marketing world, you might design a logo, you might start a branding project with someone, and you become very attached to it because you work so long and hard to create these things. And I learned very early on, you've just got to let go of your own... let go of your own, what's the word?
Ego.
Ego, that's it. That's the word I'm looking for. Because people might not want to be rude and offend you, but it's so easy to become offended. And you hear all the time, artists just, when people critique their work, they get all hoity-toity and have a little tantrum about it. But in my world, you just can't afford to do that. You just have to accept that not everybody's going to like what you do and work with them on it. And often the best ideas come from working through that. If I present an idea to a client, a series of photos or a design, and they don't like it, usually they've got some really good ideas, and we mold it and we work together, and in the end it's wonderful, the outcome. But if I hadn't let go, if I'd held on to my own ideas about it, you see it so often in this industry as well. Relationships break down. But that just shows them that you're ready to produce what really they will be happy with.
And has that fired you up in the past? Like, have you got really angry with someone who hasn't liked your work?
I think anyone in this industry has. Yeah, of course. And it might just be the way that they communicate that to you. If they're really rude, emails and text messages are the worst way to do that, because you can take it the wrong way all the time. And you just have to keep remembering that. But yeah, of course, man, I've been so mad sometimes. But I think the older I get, the more mellow I get, and the more easy I can just move on. And I've learned that, through working with the client and listening to their ideas more and trying to implement them, not pretending to know everything and be I'm the marketing guru, you listen to me. That's never going to work. So...
All right. So when you do talk about marketing, you are talking about storytelling. How do you tell a story?
Storytelling can be in anything. That's the beauty of it. At the heart of all good marketing, I believe, is storytelling. And we've told stories forever. It's in word of mouth. It's in telling me what you did yesterday. If we can harness that for brands, if we can create content that connects humans to those brands, you can talk in that way, then it builds trust. And that's what we're talking about on the street down there. I think that's why, for me, it's so interesting, because I can visually communicate that through photography and video and design and now social media and creating content in that way. You can see the change it has. You can see the people connect to it. You can see them understand the engagement from some of the stories that you do tell. And I think a lot of people misunderstand. A story doesn't have to be once upon a time and this is the end. It can be in something simple, like how your day was. That can just be powerful in itself if it's directed right.
Right. So how should people think about creating that content then? Because I'm thinking of a story in an image or in a video, for example. Does it, does it need a beginning, a middle, and an end? Like, how do you think about it? Because this is something that I think, even though I'm in marketing, it does elude me somewhat. But I suppose from a practical point of view, do you think that all your content and what you release should have at least multiple plot points, or one or two?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's always good to have a problem and a solution, and try to work that in, especially when you're trying to sell a product or sell a brand. But it often can just be an experience. An experience might be something that's happened to a customer, or it could just be, I had this great day because I went into a shop and someone spoke to me about, my kid and what they were wearing, and it can just be as simple as that. I work with Mater Private Hospital, and we're working on their Mother's Day campaign, and we're telling stories from patients about becoming a new mother. And it doesn't have to be selling the hospital in many ways. It's just their experience as a new mother and how that makes them feel. And that's a story, all on its own.
Interesting. So when I go to write an email, or I go to create a video, or go to create an image, or some sort of content, or some sort of way of communicating with, the customers or whoever I'm targeting, should your internal dialogue be, for everything you do, what is the story here?
That's the way I like to think. What is the story I'm trying to tell? And for me, a lot of the time, that's just a single emotion. What would I want to feel if I saw this photo? Or what do I want people to see in this photo? And that's the beauty of a photo. You can show any emotion through it and make people feel the same way, and that will attach them to that brand brilliantly. You don't even have to show a product in the photo, as long as they see someone with an outcome they want to feel. That's the beauty of it. So I always look at it that way. I like to try and attach an emotion to it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Like I've done some things where, like, I've got some restaurant clients where I have recently made videos for them. And what that was in the question I was asking myself is, what happens in this restaurant? And then you can just base your stories around there. And that was, that created a ton of content. Yeah. And people do resonate with it because it happens. It's an experience that actually happens.
And they're not being force-fed. They're not being sold something. They're being sold an experience. They're being, they're just seeing another human enjoy something else, and they want that. That's the beauty of it.
Brilliant.
Or not enjoy it.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Very interesting. So what are you working on now with your startups? You're talking about you're doing some side projects.
Yeah, so I got into... I started, so through this business, I started talking to a lot of startups about their marketing, and I have my own ideas. Being a creative, I'm always thinking up new things, and I've got two other things I'm working on. I've started a self-portrait art prize, and that's called my Self Prize. We started that last year, and I just did that because I just love self-portraits, and there's nothing that's really dedicated to self-portraits in Australia, and every artist does a self-portrait at some stage. And I just think they make such interesting stories about the people who produce the work.
What is a self-portrait?
Self-portrait is where you produce a piece of artwork in your own image. So you might turn that GoPro on yourself and take a photo of yourself, and that would be your self-portrait. You see a lot of... Some of the best artworks we have in the world are self-portraits from artists, Van Gogh, and with his missing ear and things like that. So I think that there was a really good opportunity there for artists to showcase what they usually hold sacred to themselves. Often artists put them to the side and put them in a cupboard and forget about them. I think this allows them a space to showcase them and celebrate them, and with other people who love self-portraits. So there's that. And now I've started another startup called Gig VR, and I've co-founded that with another guy called Chris Brady, and we're filming music gigs in 360 videos. So we're starting to produce content for the virtual reality market, and letting people relive their gigs in 360 video. And
so where do you place the camera then?
So we put it right on the stage.
Okay.
Right in the middle of the action. Do you know what's great? We've partnered with the zoo.
Which is a venue here in Brisbane.
Which is an icon.
Yep.
And it's very important to the music industry, but it's only reopened and under new management. And we've partnered with them, and we've been filming a lot of their gigs lately. And we put the camera right in the middle of the action because what we realized is everybody loves looking at themselves. You know, we can put the camera in between the crowd and the lead singer, and everyone can look around and see themselves in the crowd and see their friends and feel like they're right in the middle of it and not off to the side or not off in the distance. And we've had some great nights where the camera's been knocked over by crowd surfers, and that's just awesome. That's the best.
Is it?
Yeah. You can get on and see that stuff on our Facebook page.
Why is that awesome?
Oh man,
doesn't that record the footage?
Because that's what live music's about.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
it's blood, sweat, and tears. Like it's the best. I've been in the mosh pit every night protecting the camera from complete annihilation, but I love every second of it. I just love live music.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is really interesting because there's a whole marketplace out there, especially with as virtual reality becomes more popular and we start to see a lot more goggles sold. There's a real need for content, and this kind of just keeps the local music scene kicking gives bands new ways to connect with their fans and a new global digital audience.
And how do you think the business case will work for that? Because is that something for people to go back and relive, or is that something for people to live that perhaps weren't there on the night? Because you're talking about, you know, people love to see themselves there. So is it mainly for, okay, you come along to a gig, you watch it, and now you can go back and watch it again, but not only can you watch the band, you can watch yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, and it gives them power to be their own director. They can move around and watch what they want. You know, as we start to get into live streaming of events as well, there's a huge opportunity for people who, you know, can't be there on the night. They can clock in and see what's going on in a virtual space. It's fantastic. But yeah, look, I think everybody loves seeing themselves at the event because they go and share that with their friends on the night. They're there, they turn up with 10 of their friends, and then they can kind of pinpoint where they've all fractioned off to in the mosh pit, and you see some of them crowd surfing past the camera. It's great.
That's great. So who pays?
Who pays?
Yeah. For the service.
Oh, for the service.
The band, the venue, the user.
Well, at the moment we're doing it for free, just for awareness. But what we're with the zoo, of course. But what we're moving towards is putting on our own events, and we're going to then start monetizing that through an app. So we'll start to distribute our own content that we film, especially for virtual reality. So we're just creating awareness, and we're just giving people something to enjoy at the moment, and we're working out what the users want and how they interact with it. And so far, so good. There's been really wonderful engagement. Everyone loves the new technology. They love reliving the gigs in these ways, you know. So next step for us is we'll start to secure a bit of investment, and we'll put on our own gigs that we can film the way we want, especially for, you know, viewing through a set of goggles.
Right.
So
I love it.
You get the best experience.
I'm a live music fan myself, and been a musician for a long time. And
yeah, you're a punk man.
Yeah, love my punk. I was just thinking when you're telling me that I was at an Area 7 concert recently. I don't know if you've heard of them, but
totally.
They sing Nobody Likes a Bogan. And it was during that song that the singer got his iPhone out, and he put on, I think he streamed it to Facebook Live, and he put a selfie on himself.
Yeah.
It was a selfie, and he was in front of the audience. So we were all there behind him singing.
Yeah.
Nobody Likes a Bogan, and he's given us the mic, and it was quite a different, I hadn't seen that done before. It was a different way of interacting with the audience on the night.
Well, bands have to do this now. The old days are gone, and there are new ways to, you know, connect with your fans, and by doing that, you know, he brought everyone into the same experience, and people have gone back and re-looked at it and shared it, and they'll remember it forever.
Yep.
It's great.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I definitely.
So we'll see you in the mosh pit one day.
Yeah. I'm always in there. Don't worry about that. I've only crowd surfed once though, and I can't bring myself to do it again.
I wouldn't mind doing that.
Really?
Yeah.
Have you not done it?
Well, I'm always protecting the camera. See, that's the thing. Like,
but before you did this stuff, you would have been at gigs before that.
Oh yeah. See, that's where I started in street press. I was, I was in the mosh pit at the big day out taking photos.
Yeah.
The best experience I ever had was with Metallica. I'd love to see that band again live. But we're in the photo pit, and for those of you that don't know, photographers are only traditionally allowed in there for the first 3 songs. And
where is it? Is it right in front of the band?
Right in front of the band, in the space between the crowd and the band.
Yep.
It's usually quite large. And Metallica came out, they strummed the first note, the crowd went wild. I got dragged out by my head by a security guard. He was just trying to protect me. The crowd surged and almost killed us. And on the way out, I took a photo of the crowd, and they're all just bathed in red light and screaming like zombies. It was great. Can't wait. I'd love to go back and do that again.
Right. It sounds scary though.
No. Well, only when you're getting dragged out by a security guard. I didn't know what was happening.
Right.
But so this is exciting. This is great, and it gives me an opportunity to tell stories for bands as well. This is what I'm all about. And so, but being exposed to these projects, starting to live them and work out how to get something off the ground and actually doing it myself is teaching me a lot about business, but also resilience. And
how so? Just by protecting the camera in the mosh pit, or other reasons as well?
Oh man, see, it's an interesting place. I was in the mosh pit the other day, and I was just pressed up against this really large guy, and I was covered in his sweat, and I just had a moment where I was pressed, my cheek was smushed against his back, and I just thought, just go with it. There's no point trying to protect yourself.
Right. Well, when we started this podcast, I'd have no idea it would go this way.
A sweaty heap.
Right. Okay. So that's your resilience, is that dealing with sweat in the mosh pit?
No, resilience from just, all the ups and downs of starting something. I started my business a long time ago. A lot of these things are very different now. We're in a different world where technology's different. How to get your message out there. It's kind of different starting something new. It's easy to think you know it all, but it all changes all the time. It's always good to keep reinventing yourself, but we're learning a lot about the technology space.
And that new brand's nothing, in the beginning, is it? No matter how much experience you've got with your old company, you've got to build another brand.
That's right. It's building it from scratch. And, we do that for clients as well, but it's another thing to live it. I think that helps what we do, at Sheen Media. I'm starting to understand more about the needs of people bringing out a project in 2017, starting up a new brand and launching it to a whole new digital audience. It's a very different landscape to when I started. It's easy for us to just, work on different campaigns and create different pieces of content. But when you're working on something yourself, and you really learn a lot about what's required and what people actually need.
And I think it reminds you of the psychology, right?
It does.
So it helps you put yourself in a client's shoes a lot better, I think.
It does, because I'm living everything they are again. So and that's probably why I had those moments, those really low moments that I had to kind of overcome and get on top of, because they came out of nowhere, and it's all because I was starting to do more than maybe I was used to, and go into areas that I wasn't so sure about, and I had a lot of question marks that I wasn't sure how to answer.
Very interesting. Well, I think you're going to change the way that people behave in a crowd as well now with this new startup, because they're going to feel like they have to impress as well. They're part of the show now.
I hope someone listens to this, sees me at the zoo protecting the camera, and picks me up for a crowd surf. I just hope that happens.
That's what I'm here to help you with, Phil. Phil, by getting this out there. So
Good on you, Jay.
Yeah. All right. So we'll have to wrap up in a minute, but I'd be interested to, and this is a question I ask every podcast, and I think we have touched on it. We're going to probably smoothly transition into it here. But what's your relationship like with self-doubt?
Self-doubt. Well, I think we all have it at some level, at some stage. I don't ever really doubt myself, unless somebody else tells me I can't do something. I start to wonder. I've always been that person that can just kind of push through that. But with self-doubt, when I start to think something might be a little bit tough, I've always just pushed through, and I don't know. Is it weird to not really have a massive issue with self-doubt?
I don't think it's weird. Most people, probably 95% of people I've asked, say they have it.
I think when you I've had it, but I think when you really know for sure what you're supposed to be doing or what you want to do, it's a lot easier to kind of push through that. I feel like that's the path I'm on at the moment.
So kind of like an annoying thorn in your side from time to time.
God, self-doubt would be coming on a podcast like this, and you heard how many times I mucked up today already. That was my biggest can I really do this? I'm always behind the camera, or I'm always directing something. I'm never the person on the other end. So
right.
This is really weird. Yeah.
I reckon it's easy being this one, the interviewer, because I can always just put a question back on you.
Oh, yeah.
You know. So, no, very interesting. So self-doubt, so you have it. Like, does it frequently affect you? Would you say once a week, twice a week? I reckon I'm at about twice a week. I have an hour or two here and there where I'm just like, nah, it's not going to happen, mate.
It totally happens in the areas I don't really understand about business. I'm totally fine about getting my creative ideas off the ground and getting them out there, and I'm totally fine with that. But it's the things that I maybe don't care about so much that makes me wonder, can I really do this? Do I have to do this? Is this what's affecting me? I think that's where I struggle with self-doubt. I'm constantly trying to re-educate myself on, and push past that so it doesn't poke its ugly head. But that's what would get me down and make me question whether I can do something. It's just not understanding properly. And
what are some of those areas?
Oh, look, for me, I'm not a numbers man. I'm constant,
really?
Like I just
I love my numbers.
Yeah, don't ask me anything number related. Anything to do with accounting and bookkeeping and the things that keep your business going that you should really care about. That's probably where I see a lot of self-doubt, because I don't maybe understand it a lot of the time. And I'm fortunate my wife is now a bookkeeper, and I can rely on her for that as well. But those are the kind of things that can kind of upset the apple cart a lot when you don't understand something.
Yeah, I think it's often that people have you'd group it into that accounting numbers sort of section, or in the other section you're talking about, like the creative and the actually producing the content and the flair side of things. And both are important, but I'm probably stronger in the numbers and the logic and the putting your systems together and all that than I am in the flair. Like by the time I get to that, I feel like I'm pretty boring. I've done all the boring stuff, and now I've got I don't know what I'm going to do interesting now. Yeah,
totally, I get it. And like for me, it's those areas that affect my business. When I don't pay enough attention to them, I'm like, oh geez, it's slowing me down. I got to go back and solve a whole heap of issues I just didn't want to deal with at the time or didn't understand, and now I've got to go and put out some fires. And so I think that's where my self-doubt comes in.
Well, Phil, thanks for being with us today. That was a great discussion. I really appreciate you being part of the podcast. What's some areas we can find you?
So you can find me at Sheen Media, sheenmedia.com.au. Check out what we're doing with the Self-Portrait Prize, myselfprize.org.au.
Yep.
And Gig VR, gigvr.tv.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Are you on social?
Yeah, we're on social media too, so just look for those.
No worries. I'll put it all in the show notes anyway.
Yeah, that'd be good. Thanks for having me. This is such a great podcast. I really think it's a good idea for people in this community to all get together and share what they go through. And like I said earlier on, it's important to know you're not alone sometimes in some of these things you struggle with. Like for me, that's the biggest question mark. Is anyone else going through this? Like you can learn a lot from this. So I think this is such a great podcast.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Phil.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us.
Good on you. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Be The Push podcast. Show notes can be found at bethepush.com/podcast and clicking on the relevant episode link. I appreciate your company and look forward to talking to you again soon.